Seated. Council, those CDs will get to you tomorrow morning, okay?
Thank you. Sorry.
Tomorrow morning for the CDs?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I was.
That's okay, I just wanted you to know, maybe we'll stop a couple of minutes early if I can today so that staff can work on that at the close of the business day.
Thank you.
Sorry. The microphone there, is that being used for your honor?
It's used for, yeah. Let's take this one back, and we'll just have the, oh, I see, because your voice, you just have to speak louder.
I can speak.
You can do it.
I should tell my spouse that, Your Honor. I will definitely speak louder, and I will be much more cognizant of if I need to move about the well to grab that microphone. So we can leave this one here permanently, and ideally leave that one back here.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you. Shall we put the witness back on the stand?
Just have one brief one. I just need to say. Just trying to make sure we don't have anything slowing us down later on.
And Attorney Agati, if you want us at any point to lower the lights, or defense, if you want us to lower the lights because you're showing something on the screen, then just let us know, okay? All right, now we're going to put the witness back on the stand. And just be careful of the wires, please.
Thank you.
Everybody ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All rise for the jurors, please.
All rise.
Please be seated. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective.
That you remain under oath.
Yes.
And good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We met, about a month and a half ago, December 29th, for a deposition in this case?
Yeah, I know we met. I don't know if it was that long ago or no. My
Time
time's-
does move pretty quickly
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
But so in any event, I'll just be asking you many of the same questions that I asked you then. And I just want to begin by asking you about the experience with Blue Star you had up to that day of January 1st, 2022, when you processed the Chrysler Sebring, or began rather the processing of the Chrysler Sebring. Up to that point, approximately how many times had you previously professionally used Blue Star for processing?
A rough approximation would be probably 15 to 20 times that I've used it.
And you used that experience in processing this particular item, correct?
That's correct.
That item being the Chrysler Sebring.
Yes.
It was already in the Manchester garage bay when you saw it, right?
Yes, it was.
Missing tires,
Yes.
and I believe you described them as guts, but a lot of car parts were actually inside
That's correct.
the vehicle.
Yes.
So for using the Blue Star, one of the first things you have to do, obviously, is mix the chemicals, correct?
Yes.
And it is your practice before doing so to always reread the instruction manual.
Yes.
it never hurts just to make sure you're following it correctly, right?
That's correct.
And as you mentioned, there's the possibility that the instructions could have changed since
Yes.
the last time.
Yes.
So you implemented that same practice here. Before processing the Sebring, you reread the instructions.
Yes.
And I think you had also indicated that the instructions are fairly idiot-proof, I think you had said. But
Yes.
all the same, you made sure to comply with those instructions in the processing of the Sebring.
Yes, it did.
You applied, well, let me just back up. It took a while to process this car, right?
Yes, it did.
2 different dates.
Yes.
January 7th was one.
Yes.
The second date was the 7th.
Yes.
On the first, Detective Tucker assisted you
Yes, he did.
for at least part of the time.
Yes.
And then on the second date, the 7th, Detective Lamy helped you, right?
That's correct.
And again, your goal with the Blue Star was to apply it to every nook and cranny of both the exterior and interior, correct?
Correct.
And before doing so, you obviously you dimmed the lights in the bay.
In the bay, they're either on or they're off.
Okay.
There's no dimming feature to it.
But there was some light, maybe potentially, but it doesn't have to be pitch black for you to be able to see the Blue Star, correct?
We would use the flashlight that I had.
With the exterior, there were no positive reactions, right?
Correct.
A positive reaction you've learned through your training experience lasts about 30 to 60 seconds,
That's correct.
and it is that top blue color on that Kleenex box that's by the jury, right?
That's correct.
And you're able to distinguish that from what's called a false positive.
Correct.
Probably the same color, but it's more like a flash, right?
Yes.
It lasts for just a few short seconds.
That's correct.
There are a few things that can cause a false positive, one of those being a cleaning agent, right?
That's correct.
So sometimes in your investigations, a false positive can itself have some evidentiary value, right?
That's correct.
It may suggest that efforts were made to try and clean whatever object it was that you were processing.
That's correct.
Let's now talk about the application of the Blue Star to the interior of the vehicle. Before doing so, you placed down some butcher paper on the garage floor,
That's correct.
and you removed the items from the interior of the car.
That's correct.
And when I'm talking about the interior, there's the trunk, and that's been pretty well covered, but there's also the cabin,
That's correct.
the passenger cabin,
Yes.
the front seats and rear seats.
Yes.
So you removed any items, including car parts, from the interior before applying the Blue Star,
Yes, I did.
and you applied the Blue Star in the manner specified to you in the instruction manual.
Yes.
Again, it's not like a burst. It's a light spray that you're trying to provide, right?
That's correct.
You don't need to saturate it or anything,
Correct.
but you want to make sure that you apply that mist over the entirety of the vehicle
That's correct.
and the interior.
Yes.
This would include the steering column,
Yes.
center console,
Yes.
driver's seat,
Yes.
all the seats for that matter,
Yes.
and that's what you did.
Yes.
And there was no positive reaction.
That's correct.
No positive reaction on the steering column,
Correct.
steering wheel,
Correct.
driver's seat,
Correct.
the entirety of the passenger seat,
Correct.
or the center console.
That's correct.
And that's what you documented in your report.
Yes.
A report which was later provided as discovery.
Yes.
And so just to be clear, this was the entirety of the interior that you applied the Blue Star.
Yes.
That would include not just the front passenger cabin, but the entirety of the rear passenger cabin.
Yes.
That would include all of the rear seats.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, at this point, entirety is entirety. I believe his answer was twice.
Overruled.
And that would include the entirety of the seat for for the back passenger,
Yes.
and crevices.
Yes.
And again, there was no reaction.
Correct.
False or negative?
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a moment, please, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you.
I don't want to have him totally excused.
Excuse me.
We don't want to have him totally excused.
I haven't excused him.
Your Honor, the state calls Anthony Bodero to be
Please just watch the wires, sir.
And Mr. Bodero, you can just remain standing
Sure.
and raise your right hand.
Sure.
Do you swear that the testimony that you're about to provide this jury will be the truth and the whole truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Sir, yes, sir.
Have a seat and make yourself comfortable. There's some water ready for you if you need it.
Thank you.
How are you doing today, Mr. Bodero?
All right.
Can you start by stating and spelling your full name for the record?
My name is Anthony Bodero, Anthony Bodero.
And sorry, we're just getting set up, Mr. Bodero. I apologize.
It's okay. Take your time.
Your Honor, may I actually approach and just try to plug that back into?
Sure. Go ahead. That's fine. I'm just going to step
Oh, sure.
behind you for a minute there.
Sure.
Mr. Bodero, what's your date of birth?
August 30th of 1973.
And how far did you go in school?
High school. 11th grade.
11th grade. What's the current city that you reside in?
Manchester, New Hampshire.
And how long have you lived here in Manchester?
Like 13, 14 years.
Mr. Bodero, are you familiar with an area in Manchester called the Colonial Village Apartments?
Yes, sir.
And how are you familiar with that area?
I used to reside at the residence here.
And again, Mr. Bodero, we're making a record, so I'm just going to ask, there's a little microphone in front of you. I'm just going to ask that you speak into that and as loud as you can.
I used to reside at Colonial Village.
How long did you live in Colonial Village for?
Lived there for like 4 months at one time, and then like another 4 or 5 months after that.
And what were the periods that you lived there? What years?
I lived there from July of 2019 to, I would say, I think it was March of the following year. Yes, March of 2020.
Okay. And who did you live there with in that period that you just mentioned, the July 2019 to March 2020?
I lived with a friend of mine.
And what's your friend's name?
Her name is Tanya Clement.
And what were the circumstances? What was the arrangement that you had with Tanya, that living situation?
We would share the bills for the rent of the apartment.
While you were living there during that period that we're discussing, so not the later time, but the July to March, did you own a vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell these jurors what kind of vehicle you owned?
I believe it was a 2004 Audi S4 in blue.
Would you recognize that vehicle if you saw it today?
Of course.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Bodero, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 22.
Exactly.
Do you recognize
That's
that?
definitely my old car, yes.
And so you recognize it as your old car?
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm gonna ask you, it's a big courtroom
Just
and
speak
everybody wants to
louder.
hear you, so please
Okay.
keep your voice up.
Yes, that was my vehicle.
Okay. Is this a fair and accurate representation of your vehicle? Is this
Yes.
what your vehicle looked like, in other words?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I move to strike the ID and mark as full State's Exhibit 22.
Any objection?
May we approach?
Yes?
And Mr. Bodero, you said you recognize this vehicle, that this is a fair and accurate
Yes, sir.
photograph of your vehicle.
Yes.
Is this what your vehicle looked like the last time you saw it?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, I move to strike ID and mark as full State's Exhibit 22.
No objection.
All right, the idea is stricken, it's entered as a full exhibit.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Bodero, that exhibit that I just handed you, the photo of your car, I put it up on the screen behind you. Can you take a look at that for a moment? And can you tell these jurors what that image is of?
What the images of?
Yes.
My vehicle.
And I think you said the last time you saw it, that's what the vehicle looked like?
Yeah.
What
Yes.
happened to your vehicle after you left the Colonial Village apartments?
It was sitting for about 2 years at my in-laws.
Why was it sitting at your in-laws for 2
And
years?
I could not get it started.
Mr. Bodero, at some point between when you left that vehicle for 2 years at your in-laws and today, did you consent to a search of that vehicle?
Yes.
And was that with the Manchester Police Department?
Yes.
Mr. Bodero, I want to switch gears. Do you know someone named Adam Montgomery?
Yes.
And you can reposition yourself, that's fine. How do you know Mr. Montgomery?
I happened to meet him August of 2019.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Bodero, I'm showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 101. Do you recognize the individual that's depicted in this photo?
Yes, sir.
And who do you recognize that to be?
As Adam Montgomery.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes, you may.
And Mr. Bodero, is this the same Adam Montgomery that you
That's fine.
that you met in August of 2019?
Yes, sir.
How often would you interact with Mr. Montgomery back in 2019?
I saw him maybe every few days or something like that.
How about Kayla Montgomery? Do you know someone named Kayla Montgomery?
Yes, sir.
And how do you know her?
I happened to meet her in 2013.
2013?
Yes.
How did you meet the defendant in August of 2019?
I needed a ride to the Rockingham courthouse to dispute a driving without a license ticket, and I needed a ride, so I happened to call a friend of mine, and he didn't have his car, so he said that he was with a friend of his and that he would ask him if he can give me a ride. He called me back, told me that the guy said okay. Then him and Adam Montgomery came to pick me up to take me to court. And when they arrived with 3 children, with Harmony and the 2 boys.
And you mentioned Harmony and 2 boys. Did you see those 3 children after that event?
Yes.
When did you, let's talk about, when did you last see Harmony?
The last time I saw Harmony was the second and last time I ever saw her, and that was about 3 weeks to a month later after the August incident. I saw her with them where they resided at.
Mr. Bodero, I want to switch gears with you again. Have you ever been convicted of a felony drug charge?
Yes, sir.
Were you in fact convicted of felony drug possession in 2014?
14. I think so, yes.
How about in 2016?
Yes.
How about in 2019?
No.
And Mr. Bodero, did you provide testimony to the grand jury related to this case back in March of 2022? So March 21st of 2022.
I believe, yes, sir.
And do you remember being asked in that grand jury proceeding whether or not you sold drugs to the defendant back in 2019?
Yes, sir.
Did you provide an honest answer to that question?
No, I did not.
During that grand jury testimony, were you given any type of immunity before you were asked the questions
No.
about drugs? And after your testimony, after your grand jury testimony, did you agree to meet with investigators regarding the case?
Yes, sir.
And was that in September of 2022?
Sounds about right.
At that point, had you been provided any type of immunity regarding drug activity?
No, I don't think so.
Do you recall agreeing to meet with those investigators, signing a written document?
I did agree to meet with them, yes, with an attorney.
Did you have an understanding about how your statements could be used, whether they could be used against you?
Yes.
What was your understanding of that?
That they would not use it against me as long as I told the truth.
And you mentioned having an attorney.
Yes.
Is that attorney here with you today?
Yes, sir.
And regarding your testimony here today, have you been provided immunity based on that drug information?
Yes, sir.
Before testifying today, you were provided immunity.
Yes, sir.
Based on that, Mr. Bodero, I want to ask you questions about your sale of drugs back in 2019. Specifically, back in 2019, did you sell drugs to the defendant, Adam Montgomery?
Yes, sir.
Did you sell drugs to Kayla Montgomery?
Yes, sir.
How often would you sell the defendant and Kayla drugs?
Whenever I had any available,
How frequently was that?
not frequent.
Were you actively selling drugs back then?
When I did have, yes.
And how would they pay you when they would purchase those drugs?
They would either pay me with cash or they would sell me food stamps.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean when you say they would sell you food stamps?
Well, I would give them half of whatever they gave me in food stamps.
And let me back up. What type of drugs were they buying from you back then?
Heroin and crack.
Mr. Bodero, did the defendant, in this case Adam Montgomery, did he ever sell drugs for you?
Negative, no.
Did you ever employ Mr. Montgomery to sell drugs for you?
No.
Did you ever hire him in any capacity?
No.
Mr. Bodero, I want to turn your attention to Thanksgiving of 2019. Does that time frame stand out to you?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell these jurors why that stands out to you?
Because they approached me saying they had no place to live, and I let them stay in my vehicle.
And can you describe that arrangement where you let them stay in your vehicle?
Well, the reason I had them stay in the vehicle is because I was living with somebody else, that it was their apartment, and there was no room for them to be there. So the only choice I had was to let them stay in my vehicle.
And do you recall the specific, let me back up. How many days did they stay in your vehicle
2
for?
days.
2 days.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall the specific days?
No, it was just after Thanksgiving weekend.
And Mr. Bodero, who stayed in your vehicle?
Adam, Kayla, and the 2 boys.
Earlier you mentioned Adam's third child, Harmony.
Yes.
Where was Harmony during that time where you let them stay in your vehicle?
I do not know.
Was she with them?
No.
Did you see her at any point during that period where they were staying in your vehicle?
No, sir.
And do you recall how they came to be living in your vehicle? Can you tell the jurors what that conversation was like?
Well, from what I recall, they gave me a call and told me they had no place to go. They came to where I was staying at. I let them upstairs. We talked, and I told them, I was like, I could let you stay in my car, but I can't let you stay here because this is not my apartment. That was the arrangement.
The car that you allowed them to stay in, was that the same car that I showed you an image of
Yes,
just
sir.
moments ago? Mr. Bodero, back in late 2019, did you have a Facebook account?
Yes.
What was your Facebook name back then, if you can recall?
Anthony Tone Capone Bodero.
Anthony Tone, sorry?
Capone
Capone.
Bodero.
Is that your full name, or
No, that's just a street name.
Tone specifically, is that what you go by?
Well, they call me Tony.
Were you friends with the defendant on Facebook, the defendant in this case?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Do you recall what his Facebook name was back then?
I believe it was his name, Adam Montgomery.
How often would you communicate back then, late 2019, how often would you communicate with the defendant?
I don't remember, sir.
How would you communicate with him?
telephone mostly.
Did you communicate with him on Facebook at any point?
I don't recall, but I wouldn't doubt it.
So I want to talk about those 2 days when they were staying in your car. The defendant, Kayla, and their 2 sons. Did you take them anywhere during those 2 days?
No.
Do you think that seeing your Facebook messages might refresh your recollection regarding whether or not you took them somewhere?
I guess.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, you may.
And I think you said this already, Judge, but may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bodero, I'm just handing you, and actually, sorry, I can just have this. So, Mr. Bodero, I'm showing you it's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 107. I'm just going to ask that you look this document over, paying attention to this page.
I'm gonna read that.
To yourself.
The whole thing, or just this page?
That page to yourself, and then just look up to your document.
I finished.
So, Mr. Bodero, first let me ask, does that refresh your recollection regarding whether or not you drove the defendant?
To tell the truth, I don't even remember.
Okay. The item that you just reviewed, what do you understand that to be?
Guess they must have reached out to me. They needed to go to the clinic. They asked for a ride, and I guess I must have told them, give me 20 minutes. I just woke up, and I guess I must have took them to the clinic.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Is that a conversation between yourself and the defendant?
I don't even remember. It could have been with Adam or Kayla.
Okay. Mr. Bodero, as part of your involvement with this case, did you provide consent for officers to search your Facebook account?
Yes.
Mr. Bodero, during that 2-day period where the defendant slept in your car, did you allow him to drive your vehicle at all?
I don't think so. I wouldn't let nobody drive my car.
And seeing those messages, does that refresh your recollection at all regarding whether or not you took them to the methadone clinic?
Does not, sir.
And do you recall specifically having those communications with the defendant?
No, I do not.
Mr. Bodero, when the Montgomerys stayed in your vehicle, how often would you see them?
Not much.
What does not much mean?
Like, I was upstairs in my apartment with my wife, and I hardly went outside.
Mr. Bodero, do you recall sitting down with investigators and talking to them about that period of time?
Yes.
Do you recall telling them specifically that you rarely saw the defendant and Kayla during that period?
I rarely saw them. But I wasn't checking on them.
Were you aware of their living situation prior to them living in your car?
Not sure. Just I know they told me they had no place to go, and that's why I let them stay in the car.
And at that time, were you aware of where they had been living immediately before then?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whether they were staying in their own vehicle prior to using yours?
No, I don't.
Those rare times that you would see them, how would you see them during that period?
They would come see me. After I served them, they would leave.
And when you say they would come see me, is that the defendant and Kayla, or is that someone else?
They either came together or separate.
Do you recall telling those investigators that they were always together?
Yeah, they were always together.
During those 2 evenings, or those 2 days that you allowed them to stay in your vehicle, did something happen to your vehicle during that time?
Yes. The first night, I guess, from what they told me, Kayla didn't know how to drive a manual transmission car. She turned it on for the heat, and it killed the battery. And I guess when he woke up, he went somewhere, supposedly from what they said, he went somewhere in the middle of the night to get a portable car charger. So by the time the next day when I came out, they already had the car started. So I don't know. I wasn't around, so I don't know.
Mr. Bodero, do you recall specifically who told you that information about Kayla starting the car?
They were both telling me. They were both together.
Do you recall telling investigators that the defendant actually gave you that information?
No.
They were both together when you learned it.
Well, yeah, they were both together.
And I'm sorry, you said that earlier. They were always together.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you provide them any items during their two days in your vehicle?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors what you gave them?
I gave them leftover Thanksgiving dinner one night, and then the following day, I bought 2 pies from Domino's Pizza, and I gave them a pie, and I still with a pie for me and my wife.
Mr. Bodero, if I can have just a moment. So just brief follow-up, Mr. Bodero. You mentioned seeing where the defendant resided. Can you tell the jurors where that was?
I always forget the name of this where it's at, but I went there one time to bring them some food.
Okay. Was it a house, an apartment, something
Yes,
else?
it was a house.
How would you describe that house?
It was a small little house.
And would that have been, what time of year was that?
That was in September 2019.
September 2019?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Mr. Bodero, would you recognize that house if you saw it again today?
Yes.
Showing you what's been published, admitted and published as State's Exhibit 1.
That's it.
And when you say, yeah, that's it, what do you recognize that to be?
I reckon that to be the house where they were residing in.
That house at Guilford Street.
Yes, I believe that's the name of the street.
How many times did you go to this house on Guilford Street?
I think maybe I only remember the one time, but it could have been twice. But I remember only one time. I didn't go visit them, so I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Bodero. No further questions, Your Honor. I pass the witness.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Bodero. My name is Caroline Smith. How are you?
All right, good afternoon.
A little bit nervous?
Always.
Okay. And I think your first introduction to this case was when marshals came to speak to you
Yes,
in January of 2022.
yes.
And you wanted nothing to do with this case, right?
Well, I didn't know anything about the case, so.
Yeah, except for what you read in the paper, right?
Except for what the officers told me.
Okay. And you said, I've got no involvement with anything involving a child, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes, yes.
no way, right?
No,
Okay. And you got subpoenaed to the grand jury,
yes,
and they had you swear an oath there to tell the truth, right?
yes,
And they gave you some ground rules about your testimony at the grand jury, right?
what you mean ground rules?
Okay. Well, they told you that you could refuse to answer a question if it would incriminate you, right?
No, you didn't tell me that.
They told you you had the right to be represented by an attorney, right?
Yes,
And that you had the right to refuse any answer in the grand jury, but only if that answer would incriminate you. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Okay. Let me show you a copy of a transcript of your grand jury, okay?
Sure?
So first of all, that was a long time ago, right?
Yes,
And does March 21 of 2022 sound about right?
yes.
Okay. So I'm going to show you a copy of, you can see on the outside, grand jury proceedings, right?
Yes,
About the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery.
yes,
And you were sworn in at the beginning of the grand jury, right?
yes.
And I want you to go through and I'm going to take you from the bottom of page 3 into page 4 and ask you to read that to yourself, okay? And then I'm going to ask you a question.
You said bottom of page 3?
In the page 4.
Where the bottom? From here? From
Sure,
here?
sure. Why don't you do there? Does that refresh your recollection? Okay. In the transcript to the grand jury, well, while you were in the grand jury, you were advised that you had the right to refuse to answer a question if it might incriminate you, right?
From what it says here, yes, I guess. I just don't remember.
Okay, that's fine. And it says that, yes, you understood, right?
Yes,
So, you also said you lied to the grand jury, right?
yes,
Okay. And being advised that you had the right to refuse to answer a question or you had the right to an attorney, you chose to lie under oath.
I didn't know that I was gonna need an attorney,
Okay.
so I agreed to answer their questions.
So when the question came up to something that would incriminate you, you chose to lie rather than ask for an attorney, right?
I got scared, and I didn't think about what they told me about asking for an attorney.
Sure, sure. And you were scared because they thought you had information about Harmony, right?
Yes,
And you didn't want anything to do with this, right?
of course.
You didn't want to be implicated in this in any way at all, right?
No,
Okay. So, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. You talked about meeting Adam because you needed a ride to court.
yes,
And you didn't have a license that day, right?
no,
Have you ever had a license?
no,
You did not have a license in November of 2019 then, right?
no.
If you've never had one, you
I've
didn't
never
have
had
one.
one, exactly.
Excuse me, and you didn't have one in December of 2019?
No.
Okay. And you talked about your prior convictions, and one of the prior convictions, I think that you said was possession of a controlled drug from 2018,
Yes,
and that was actually possession with intent to sell, right, or dispense?
I guess. I don't remember. I don't recall.
Okay. If I showed you a copy of the record of that conviction, would that help refresh your recollection?
Maybe.
Okay. I'm going to show you what is a certified copy of a conviction returned from Superior Court, state prison sentence for Anthony Bodero, right?
Yes.
And January 12, 2018,
That's when I was released.
that was the day you were sentenced. Well, actually, okay.
I got released as well.
Yeah, because you were actually in jail pre-trial, and the day you got sentenced, you got a suspended sentence, and they released you.
All I know is they let me go.
Okay. And so you got a sentence of 3 to 6 years with all but 92 days suspended. Does that sound right?
No. I believe it was the 92 whatever days time served, and then suspended time after.
Right. Okay. I may have said it wrong because I
You
have
did.
gotten a little bit tired.
Okay.
So it was 3 to 6 years as a sentence. All of that was suspended except for the 92 days that you had already served.
Yes.
So when you mean you got released, you were held on bail before the conviction, and the day you got sentenced, you were let out.
Well, they picked me up from a state prison. I did a bit in a state prison. They picked me up. I did 92 days here in Valley Street, and then I got released.
Gotcha. Okay. And so then you had a suspended sentence hanging over your head of
Yes.
3 to 6 minus that 92 days.
I guess, yes.
Okay. And that was suspended for 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then in November 22nd, 2019, you got another drug charge.
No.
Drug conviction, sorry.
No. Say that again. When?
November 22nd, 2019,
Is it
you got
possible?
convicted on another charge.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
That's wrong.
Go ahead, Attorney Smith, go ahead.
So I think I was going to show you another certified copy of another conviction, okay? I can show you return from Superior Court, Anthony Bodero, sentence November 22nd, 2019.
Sorry, I don't know anything about that. The last time I did time for drugs was I came home in 2018.
Sure, because on this one you got a total 2 to 4 suspended. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Okay. And your attorney was Attorney Sheehan?
Yeah, that was from the old case. That's not. I have it confused.
Okay.
It can't be 2019 because I never got caught with drugs anything after 2018.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. On June 24, 2019, you were driving without a valid license, right?
That, yes.
And while you were driving without a valid license, they found drugs in your car.
No.
Basis?
No.
So, and I moved to introduce this as the next exhibit, and I don't know where we are. Jay? Mr. Bodero?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, you have some stuff here that maybe we'll take away because I'll focus on something else now, okay?
No problem.
So I have in front of me what's been marked as a full exhibit, a certified copy of your conviction from November 22nd, 2019. And we went over that first page.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the second page. And that second page is the sentence that you got on that conviction, right?
I see what you have there, but that's not what it was for. I got caught driving without a license.
Okay. And you got, according to this document, you got a sentence of 2 to 4 years, suspended for 3 years, right?
Yes.
That means that 2 to 4 years you don't spend in jail or prison, it hangs over your head for 3 years.
Yes.
With conditions that you stay arrest-free and commit no new crimes and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
And another conviction was that you got a LADAC evaluation and within 60 days provide proof to the state, right?
What's LADAC?
Drug and alcohol evaluation. Do you remember that?
Kind of.
Okay. So now we're going to go to the actual charge that was based on. And that's the indictment. You've seen indictments, right?
Yes.
And the indictment is for activities that you did on or about June 24, 2019. Is that what it says?
Yes.
And the activity that you did was possession of a controlled drug. Is that right?
That's what it says.
And this was in County of Rockingham, right?
Yes.
And it was Superior Court, right?
I guess, yes.
Like this court, Superior.
Of course.
Okay. And then you also had with that a misdemeanor for driving after revocation
Okay.
with a sentence on the same day.
That's what it says.
Okay. And your sentence for that was 12 months in the House of Correction, all suspended for 3 years, right?
Okay.
Meaning that you got another year hanging over your head for that 3 years, right?
Yes.
And one of the conditions here was that you not drive until you are properly licensed.
Yes.
So you got arrested for both of those things at the same time, right?
All I recall is getting arrested for driving without a license. No
Okay.
drug charges.
And so that the jury recognizes it when they see it later, if I may just sort of show
Yes,
them.
you may.
Your Honor, just to clarify, the defense is asking, do these jury minutes be marked full? Your state has no objection.
Oh, I thought it went in as full.
It did at the bench conference. I indicated that it was full, so.
So November 22nd, you don't recall it now, but you didn't have a license then, right?
No.
And it sounds like you're saying today you were selling drugs in November?
I don't recall.
Selling drugs in December of
I don't
2019?
recall.
Didn't you say on direct that you sold some to Adam and Kayla?
I have, yes.
Okay, so you were still selling drugs in December.
I don't recall.
So when you were telling the state that you sold drugs to Kayla and Adam, are you saying that was not in December?
I'm not saying that.
When you said that, you weren't necessarily talking about December of 2019 when you told the state you were selling them drugs.
Say that, repeat that?
Okay. Were you selling them drugs around the time that they stayed in your Audi?
I don't think, no. I don't,
Okay.
not that weekend. I can't say I sold them drugs that weekend. No, I know I didn't sell them drugs that weekend.
You know you didn't sell drugs that weekend.
No.
You can remember that
I'm
clearly.
pretty sure I remember that.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's talk about those food stamps. Those food stamps, didn't that, they sell you some food stamps when they were in Kayla's mother's home?
I don't know where they were at. I just bought the food stamps.
Okay. How about when they were at the fit shelter? Okay.
I probably did. I don't know where they were at I didn't go, I don't remember where I went to see them for them to give me the card.
Okay. Your Audi had a clutch, right?
Yes.
And the problem with the clutch, if somebody turns on the battery without turning on the car, the battery just runs down.
Yes.
And otherwise, you have to put in the clutch and have it in neutral or whatever and turn it on and keep it in neutral. And then it can run for a long time and the heat stays on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And Kayla didn't seem to know that and the car broke down.
Yes.
Well, the car battery died.
Battery died.
Okay. And, okay. You said that the picture of your car was in this same condition and it states exhibit for ID 22. Is it stricken? It's fine. I would agree if it wasn't. Was in the same condition as the last time you saw it, right?
Yes.
Because the last time you saw it, it had been sitting for a while.
It was worse. It was worse.
Okay. But when you had it at Colonial Village, it was in good condition.
Yes.
It was in real good condition.
Very good condition.
And you like to drive it around.
I mean, I drove it, yes, not to drive around.
Okay, and you kept it in good condition.
Yes.
You took care of it, right?
Yes.
And in November, late November, you had just been convicted of a crime. You had a suspended sentence on your head, and you didn't want to be caught driving that car without a license again, right?
True.
So you had other people help you drive.
Sometimes.
Okay. Adam was one of those other people.
Yeah, he has driven the car, yeah.
Okay. And Adam knew how to drive a clutch, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because and your clutch, because he had driven that car.
Mhm.
I think you said on direct that you saw Harmony twice at Guilford Avenue?
No, one time at Guilford Avenue.
And what was the other time?
Before that, the day he took me to court in August.
Oh, so she was in the car.
Yes.
Okay. And with the boys.
Yes.
And at Guilford Avenue, she was there and playing with the boys.
Yes.
And you said that Kayla and Adam needed a place to stay Thanksgiving weekend?
Yes.
And when they came and told you that they needed a place to stay, you said that you would let them stay in your car for 2 nights.
I didn't specifically say 2 nights. I said
Okay.
they can stay in my vehicle, but they happen to only stay 2 nights.
Okay.
2 days, 2 whole days.
Okay. And one of those nights, it ran out, the battery got drained.
From what they say, the first night, yes.
Okay. And you are saying that you did not go down and see them sort of squatting in the parking lot at Colonial Village
No,
in their Sebring.
no, I did not.
And you are saying that you did not go down on a daily or every other day basis to connect with the family and see Harmony and wave to her.
No,
And you are saying that Harmony did not wave to you during that time.
I didn't. They didn't have Harmony with them.
Pardon?
They did not have Harmony with them
Okay. When?
when they came to see me.
On those 2 days or before those 2 days?
It depends when you're talking about.
Okay. Did you ever, are you saying you did sometimes go down to the car to see them?
I'm pretty sure I went down a couple of times each day,
Okay. Okay.
but each time they did not have the girl with them. It was
Okay.
only the boys.
And when you were questioned by the police, they actually played a recording of Kayla's statement, right?
Yes.
And they played a recording of Kayla talking about
Approach.
So they played a section of Kayla's statement, and you got pretty upset with that, right?
I guess.
Got pretty upset with what you were hearing.
I guess, yes.
And you said that you never saw Harmony,
I never did.
and that you didn't go down there
Let's
daily.
go. When did I not see Harmony? You're just saying I didn't see Harmony, but where? When?
At the Colonial Village.
No.
And that you didn't go down to the car on a daily basis, right?
Well, 2 days they stood in the car. I went down at least a couple of times each day.
For 2 days, you went down a couple of times
At least a
each day?
couple of times, yes.
Those 2 days?
Those 2 days.
Okay. And you never, you're saying you never waved to Harmony,
Never.
never waved to the boys?
Overruled.
I'm telling you, she wasn't in the car. How can I wave to someone that's not in the car?
Did you wave to the boys?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did, yeah.
Okay.
The boys loved me.
So you would go, when you would go down there, you would see the boys and wave?
Of course.
And you want to have nothing to do with this investigation or Harmony, right?
It's not the way you're making it sound. I want to help you guys.
Who?
The prosecution helped find who killed that little girl.
Okay, so one of the things before they stayed in your car was you drove Adam and Kayla and the kids to get clothes out of their broken down car.
I don't recall that. I don't think I ever did that. I'm not sure, but I don't recall I ever did that.
Okay,
Why would I? No. I wouldn't stuff my car with anything. Let's put it like that.
you wouldn't know what?
I would not stuff my car with a whole bunch of furniture or bags or anything like that.
Okay, so bags that were from a car that people had lived in for 7 days, you never got them and packed them into your car?
I don't recall ever doing that. No, I do
Okay.
not.
And so you don't recall taking Adam or Kayla or Adam and Kayla or Adam and Kayla and the boys?
No matter how you put it, I don't recall.
Okay. And the food that you brought them, you said Thanksgiving leftovers, right?
Yes.
And then pizza.
Yes.
And Thanksgiving, if you had them in your car for around the 8th, Thanksgiving was over a week before, right?
Well, of course, that would be right.
Okay. Thanksgiving was about 10 days before that, right?
I guess. I don't know what you're talking about.
And actually, you gave the family Thanksgiving leftovers when they first came to Colonial Village in the Sebring.
No.
You didn't give them,
There was no Sebring.
okay.
They stood in my car. If they had their Sebring, they would have stood in their own car, wouldn't you think?
Okay. And you're saying that they did not park out in Colonial Village for 10 days prior to living in your Sebring?
I don't own a Sebring, and if they did bring the car to the parking lot, then I didn't know that either.
Okay.
They telling me they have no place to live. I let them stay in my car 2 days. That's
And
all they
I-
stood. They left.
I do want to correct. I did say Sebring and I meant the Audi.
Okay.
So you're saying that you did not see the Sebring in Colonial Village for the 10 days leading up to when they stayed in your Audi?
I didn't see the car, no.
Okay. You said that the boys loved you. Had
Yes,
you
they do.
seen the boys
I have
for
not
more
seen-
than those 2 times before?
Before and after, yes.
Before?
Yeah.
When did you see the boys before
I
they
saw
stayed?
Adam came to see me one time with the oldest one.
Pardon?
Adam came to see me one time with the oldest one.
Okay. And how about the others?
I guess the other one, they were with Kayla, I guess.
Okay. What I'm asking, so now that's 3 times.
No, that's
that
not 3
you-
times I saw Harmony. No. Like,
Okay.
don't get it confused.
I'm not.
I only saw her 2 times.
I'm backing up.
Okay.
Okay. First time you saw Harmony, she was with her brothers.
Yes.
Second time you saw Harmony, she was with her brothers.
Yes.
You're talking about another time that you see the brother but not Harmony.
Yes.
How many other times did you see that brother?
Plenty of times.
When?
Throughout the whole time I knew them.
Okay. Did you see the boy prior, more than those 3 times that we're talking about?
But when are you referring to? Before Harmony went missing or after Harmony went missing?
I'm trying to get there. Before the 8th, when they stayed in your Audi, had you seen the son more than 3 times?
Of course.
When?
I can't tell you exactly when, but I've seen the boys with them.
In the 10 days prior to staying in the Audi, you saw the boys with them?
I can't tell you exactly how many days prior to the day I let them stay in the car, but I did see them. Yeah,
Okay.
I seen the boys,
Okay.
not the boys. Let me correct that. The boy. There was only one boy with him.
And what circumstance did you see that boy? Was Kayla coming up to see you and bringing her son with her?
No, Adam came to see me with the boy.
Okay, so Adam would come up to see you and he'd bring his son?
Yeah.
Okay. And did they ever come in to use the bathroom or maybe clean up their kids?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bodero.
You're welcome.
Lovely to meet you, Madam Chancellor. Love this Kingfisher blue. I'll try not to get blood on it.
Mr. Bodero, what's your involvement been like with the legal system? How
Been very bad, sir. I'm not gonna lie.
Attorney Smith was just asking you about this time that the defendant came to see you with his oldest son.
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
Don't recall exactly when, but it was before Thanksgiving.
Before Thanksgiving?
Before Thanksgiving, yeah.
You said that the 2 days they were staying in your car, that you remember that clearly, that you didn't sell drugs to them. You were very clear on that. Why is that?
Because it's like if it was a family weekend. Like I don't recall selling them drugs that weekend. I don't even recall me having drugs.
Mr. Bodero, let me ask you this. How many times have you allowed a family to stay in your vehicle?
I never have. That was the first time.
Was that the only time?
First and only time, yes.
Does that stand out to you?
Well, I remember, yeah.
The defense asked you about letting people drive your car. You didn't have a license, is my understanding. Is that right?
Yes.
And the defense attorney asked about letting people drive your car. I want to follow up on that. You said that you'd occasionally allow folks to drive for you.
Not really. I would drive myself. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't have a license, but I would drive myself.
Do you recall telling investigators that I didn't let anyone drive my car, I didn't let them drive it? Do you recall telling investigators that?
I'm pretty sure I did, yeah.
The them that you were referring to, is that the defendant and Kayla?
Well, I wouldn't lend them my car if that's what they were. I don't know what y'all really trying to say by that, but I would never have lent them my car. Yeah, I recall a time he drove me somewhere in my own car, yes. But I've never lent him my car to just be on their own and drive my car.
And the time that you're talking about where you lent him your car and let him drive you somewhere, when was that?
I don't even recall, sir.
Do you recall whether there was snow on the ground, whether it was hot or warm outside?
I don't remember any of that.
You mentioned seeing the two boys
Yes.
and them waving at you, you waving back. Were you referring to the 2 days that they were staying in that the boys were staying in your vehicle, or was that some other time?
Actually, yeah, that was some other time. I was just, whenever they saw me, they waved to me. They said hi. I would grab them, hug them. I can't recall every time they said they waved to me. That's what all kids do. They say hi.
Thank you, Mr. Bodero. No additional questions from me.
So Adam did drive you around in your car, but you don't recall exactly when.
Of course, because it wasn't on a regular basis.
But it was more than once.
I can't even say that. I don't even recall that.
Okay.
I'm thinking it was only one time. So.
Okay. And when you interacted with the boys, it wasn't just waving. I think you'd say that they came up
Of
and they would
course.
hug you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it wasn't just a wave from afar. If the kids were around,
I
you
will.
came up to them and interacted.
All the time.
Okay. Oh. No further questions.
You may sit down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, this would ask that this witness be excused.
Any objection to his being excused?
I'd rather not, no.
You may sit down, but you remain under subpoena, sir. The state will explain that to you. Yes, and I think it's just about 2:30, ladies and gentlemen, so it's a good time for our mid-afternoon break, so we'll take 15 minutes. All rise for the jurors, please. Don't discuss the case, don't do any independent research, please. Please be seated. Everybody ready?
Yes.
We can bring them in. All rise for the jurors, please. You may be seated. State may call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this point, the state will call Officer Ryan Heile to the stand, please. If you would please go right over to the bailiff, watch your foot on the cords over there. Take this down, please. And Detective, if you would remain standing just for a moment, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Please feel free to have a seat. Since we're being recorded here for the day, would you please state your full name and spell both your first and last name for the record?
Yes. Ryan Heile, Ryanheile.
And Detective Heile, where are you currently employed?
The Manchester Police Department.
How long have you been working for the Manchester Police Department?
Since April 2013.
2013, so
Correct.
A little over 10 years then.
Yes.
Okay. And let me ask you, are you a full-time certified police officer with them?
I am.
Did you graduate from the New Hampshire State Police Training Academy?
I did.
And when did you graduate from there?
The summer of 2013.
Okay. Do you remember your academy class?
151.
And let me ask you, in your time at the Manchester Police Department, first of all, did you have any law enforcement experience before you started working at Manchester?
I was part-time in Southampton, New Hampshire for about a year prior.
For about 1 year?
Correct.
Okay. Since you've been with Manchester, can you please describe for the jury some of the different patrols that you've been on, different units and assignments that you've had, basically your different job duties for the department?
Okay. So when I graduated until September 2018, I was in patrol. In September 2018, I was assigned to detective.
I'm sorry, did you say September or December?
September.
September 2018, okay. With regards to that time period of being a detective, what are some of your duties that you do right now?
So my specialty is fire-related, but I also deal with anything that is adult-related.
As opposed to what, when you say adult-related?
So either juvenile or domestic violence. My area is the adult side.
Okay. Back in specifically January of 2022, were you working as a detective then?
I was.
Okay, and doing the same sort of crimes involving adults?
That is correct.
In January of 2002, were you involved and a part of a search that was done specifically of a 2006 Audi S4 with New Hampshire registration 4569334?
I was.
Okay. Where did that search where was that taking place?
In our evidence bay at our secure lot of the Manchester Police Department.
And what was your role in the search of that car?
So I type up what we call a crime scene note, which basically documents everything that took place during the search.
And what were some of the challenges that you and the other officers faced while trying to process that particular car?
It was a very biohazard conditions. Since the vehicle was covered in mold, we actually had to wear a Tyvek suit and a full face mask respirator during the search of this car.
And Detective, I'm just moving the microphone for a moment. I'd like to, Commissioner Bergeron, to show you what's been marked States Exhibit 22. Full exhibit. Do you recognize this car?
I do.
Okay, what do you recognize that to be?
That is the car that I searched.
Could you go ahead and just for a moment, please, what are we looking at that's all over the front of this car? This hood?
Leaves, dead pieces of trees, twigs,
And where was the biohazard that you had to deal with when you were processing this car?
all inside, the complete interior of the car.
I'd like to show you what's been marked States Exhibit 23 for identification purposes only. Just have you take that down there for me.
Okay.
And do you recognize that photo?
I do.
What's that a photo of?
That's the interior of the Audi that was searched.
Does that accurately reflect what you just told us with regards to the condition of the car when you searched it?
It does.
And also, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 24 for identification purposes only. And I wonder if you could take a look at that photo.
That is also the interior version in the trunk of the vehicle that was searched.
The trunk of that Audi S4.
That is correct.
Does that photo accurately depict the condition, the same one that you saw when you were part of that search back in January of 2022?
It is.
Other than the fact that both of those photos had small little red labels down on the corners, have there been any other sort of changes or alterations with regards to that photo based upon your memory of what that image looked like on that day?
No.
At this point, Your Honor, I'd ask for identification to be stricken from States Exhibits 23 and 24.
Without objection.
The ID is stricken, not 22, just, oh, you already have, 22 is already full, yes, okay. The ID is stricken on exhibits 23 and 24. They're entered as full exhibits.
Mr. Hall, I'm going to go ahead and show you States, and permission to hold, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm going to show you States Exhibit 23, this particular one. Again, what part of the car is this?
That is the interior front of the vehicle that was searched.
Interior and front?
Yes.
Okay. You said that you had to wear Tyvek suits. With regards to the interior, what was the interior color supposed to be?
It was a lighter color.
A lighter color?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, any particular color, like gray, like tan,
I believe it was a creamish color.
kind of a cream color? Okay. So with regards to the color that we're seeing on the seats, what's that on the seats here?
That is, I believe, is mold.
Also showing State's Exhibit 24, you said this is the trunk photo, correct?
Yes, sir.
With regards to this photo, do you recall, was this the condition of the trunk when you guys opened the trunk? Or were there other items that had been taken out of this?
There was a large amount of items that were removed prior to that photograph.
Large amount?
That is correct.
What kind of items are we talking about that you find inside this car?
It was a large array. It was a lot of household items, towels, clothes, masks, like COVID masks.
COVID masks?
Yes.
Nonetheless, did you and the other officers still try to process that vehicle?
We did, yes.
Okay. And how did you go about doing it with a vehicle that looked like that?
All of our skin was covered up just because of the biohazard conditions of that car. We did a very slow search of the vehicle. We did it is we did seat by seat, so make sure we did not miss anything in the car itself.
And from that, were there a number of items that were taken and placed into evidence that day, taken out of that car?
Yes, there was.
And in the end, were you yourself able to determine whether any of those items had any relevance to the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery? Just based on your own knowledge?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. And with regards to those particular items that were taken out of that car, where did they go when they left the evidence bay, or excuse me, the garage bay where you were working on the car?
They would have got secured at the evidence, which is on the second floor of the Manchester Police Department. So we were on the ground level, and it would have gone up to the second floor and been secured that way.
Are you aware that some of the evidence in this case, in general, was taken down to a place called DNA Labs International in Deerfield Park, Florida?
Yes.
And how are you aware of that?
I was one of the detectives actually that brought some of the evidence back once it was finished being processed from Florida.
Did that include any large pieces of evidence?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Do you recall what those large pieces of evidence were? And by large, I mean physical.
Yes. It was a ceiling tile was one of the items.
How big was it?
We got a full-size SUV, and if you laid it flat, it barely fit in the back seat of the SUV laying flat. So it was very large.
Was there any other sort of large items that came back from that particular lab after testing?
Yes.
What else?
We brought three different pieces of evidence back. Not all were involved in this case, but also some were railings that were part of the ceiling tile that was wrapped up and placed in a bag.
And with regards to getting those back from Florida, can you just describe for the jury how those came back and how you were a part of that?
So myself and Detective Scott Riley actually drove from South Florida all the way back up here in the SUV with all the items with us.
While driving with those items, did you ensure that they were not left alone at any time during that drive?
That is correct. It was secured in our possession the whole time.
Let me just have a moment, Your Honor. All right, Detective Heile, thank you very much for your time. I don't have any further questions for you. I believe defense counsel may have a few.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And good afternoon to you. My name is Jamie Brooks.
Good afternoon, sir.
I just want to make sure I heard this right. So, June 29th of last year, you picked up some evidentiary items pertaining to this case from a DNA lab office in Florida, correct?
That is correct.
Did you also pick up items belonging to a separate case?
There was multiple cases that we're picking up items for, yes.
So when this kind of a trip is made, I'm taking it's not that often, it's kind of like one-stop shopping. You'll just pick up everything that's ready to be brought back?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just one question, Your Honor. To your knowledge, Detective, how many times has a trip like this been done to DNA Labs International?
It's the first time that I've been made aware of it.
Thank you. That's all.
Anything further, Attorney Brooks?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
You may sit down.
Thank you, Mayor.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would call Ms. Christina Lubin to the stand. Just step on the court. Ms. Lubin, if you would please remain standing for a moment, and please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please feel free to have a seat. Ms. Lubin, as we're being recorded here today, would you please go ahead, state your full name, and then spell both your first and your last name for the record?
Christina Lubin, Christina Lubin.
Okay. And Ms. Lubin, what town do you live in?
Manchester,
How long have you lived here?
24 years.
And are you working right now?
I'm self-employed.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you do being self-employed?
Deliveries, flipping furniture, and a hired-in server.
Okay. And in addition to living here in Manchester, is your residence currently on Dubuque Street?
Yes.
And let me ask you, do you have a daughter?
Yes.
And what's her name?
Kayla Montgomery.
Do you know someone by the name of Adam Montgomery?
Yes.
Who was he?
My daughter's husband.
You also know someone by the name of Harmony Montgomery.
Yes.
Who was she?
Adam's daughter.
Go ahead and show you State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this man?
Yes, I do.
Who is this?
Adam Montgomery.
When did you first meet Harmony?
It was shortly after Thanksgiving in 2019.
So you only got to know her for a small time?
One time, yes.
One time. Where did you see her?
At my house.
And I believe you said it was right around Thanksgiving. Is that appropriate?
It was shortly after Thanksgiving, yes.
To your knowledge, was that before or after they got evicted from 77 Guilford Street?
I believe that's after they got evicted.
Ms. Lubin, beginning in the winter, December of 2019, at some point did you receive a phone call from your daughter?
I spoke to her a couple times. I'm not sure exactly which particular one you're...
Let me be more specific. At some point, did you ever see her and Adam and the two boys at your house, but not with Harmony?
Yes.
And when did that occur in December of 2019?
That was, it was before December. It was shortly after Thanksgiving because I had just put my tree up. And I don't remember the exact date. I just remember shutting off the overhead lights so that the kids could see the Christmas lights and the ornaments.
Okay. And that's when you saw Harmony that
That's
time?
when I saw Harmony.
Later in the month, did they come back to stay with you, for a longer period of time than just one afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. And when they came the second time, was Harmony still there?
No, she wasn't.
When did you find out that they had been evicted from 77 Guilford Street?
Kayla had called me at one point before seeing them at my house about having a flat tire and needing money for it. So I was leaving for the day, so I left them money in a cooler in my side hallway so that they could get their tire fixed.
You left the money in a cooler?
Yes.
Could you describe what did the cooler look like?
It was a red cooler with a white top that would flip open.
Later on, when you saw them next in December, I believe you testified a moment ago that they did not have Harmony at that point. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Where did you first see them, and how did they get to your house that day?
I picked them up at my sister's house. They went there because they had no place to go. I guess their car broke down at that point, and they had nowhere to go.
Okay.
My sister said they
Well,
definitely
hold on
couldn't
just a
stay
second.
there.
I don't want to necessarily ask you what somebody else said at this point, but I appreciate that. Let me ask a few more questions about what you just told us, though. You stated that you picked them up. What kind of car were you driving?
I had a green minivan, a Ford minivan.
So were you able to fit your daughter, Adam Montgomery, and the boys in that minivan?
Yes.
Did they have anything else with them? Did they have any luggage with them?
They had some bags with them. I don't remember exactly what.
This second time when they were there without Harmony, did you ask Adam Montgomery where Harmony was?
I asked Kayla.
You asked Kayla. Okay. Once they were there with you, how long did they stay before they moved on?
They were there a couple of weeks. I think it was like December 29th, 30th, right around then.
Do you know where they moved to when they left you?
They went to FIT in Manchester.
And FIT, is that short for the Families in Transition Shelter?
Yes.
When they were spending time with you, if you could just go a little bit into detail for us to explain your particular apartment in your building. How, if I were to come visit, how would I be able to get inside your apartment? What are the doors and where are they?
There are 3 doors to my apartment. I'm the full bottom floor. The very front door facing on Dubuque Street is where the mailboxes are, and that door is always locked. There's a middle door to the left-hand side next to a tree, and that's the side door that I have a door to my apartment there, and the people that live on the second and third floor use that door to go up and down the stairs. Then there's a back door where I park my car, and that's the door that I use as my main entrance.
When you said before that you had left money for the family and you had left it in a cooler, where was that cooler located in relation to these 3 doors you just explained?
The middle door that's next to the tree.
That's next to the tree?
Yeah.
So that's the middle door, and you mean the tree outside, not a Christmas
Right,
tree, I
right.
take it? Okay.
Yes.
That particular hallway, the door in and out of that hallway, is that, first of all, is that a hallway that's just yours, or is that a common hallway that other people can use to go up and down
That's
stairs?
a common hallway.
Common hallway. And the cooler, was that stored inside a locked part of your apartment, or was that out in the common hallway?
That was out in the common hallway.
When they stayed with you for those couple of weeks in December, what doorway did they come into your apartment? Did they go in from the back one that you described for yourself, or from that common hallway?
They went through the common hallway.
And did they have a car with them while you were there? Did you see that they owned a car at that point?
In December, no, I didn't see a car. They didn't have a car.
You stated that your apartment's on the ground floor. Is that a first floor, or is this like a basement apartment?
No, it's the first floor.
First floor, got it. And that hallway, what else is in that common hallway besides your cooler that you stored there?
There's a door that goes to the basement that's paddle locked. There's an entrance to my apartment that goes to my dining room. And then there's the stairs to the second and third floor.
The door down to the basement, I believe, is that locked or not locked?
Yes.
That's the locked one. How long had you owned that red cooler in the hallway?
Couple of years, I used it for basketball, for the basketball team.
Did you always store it in the hallway?
No, sometimes it was in the apartment, sometimes it was in the hall. Most of the time it was in the hall when basketball was all done.
You said a moment ago that you left money in the past there for Kayla and for the defendant. Was the cooler in the hallway when you did that?
Yes.
And how would you leave that money so that somebody else wouldn't take it?
So it was next to my apartment door, at the end of the hallway, and I would put money under a piece of cardboard and then close the cover.
So the cardboard was inside the cooler?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been marked States Exhibits 28 and 29. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, 2 minutes.
I'd like to go ahead and show you what's been marked States Exhibit 28 for identification purposes only at this point in time. Do you recognize the object in that photo?
Yes,
And what is that object?
that's the red cooler from my apartment.
And I'd like to also show you States Exhibit 29. Actually, and you said that's the cooler in your apartment. Is that generally in the same condition as you would keep it? Hasn't been scratched up or marked or anything else at that point?
Yes, it looks a little bit dirty.
A little dirty?
Yeah.
I'm now going to show you what's been marked States Exhibit 29 for identification purposes only. Is that still the same cooler?
It looks like the same cooler.
Okay. And can I ask, are there any other differences that you see with regards to that cooler from how we just looked at it a moment ago versus how you're looking at it there?
It looks really dirty.
Okay. And do you see any stickers that have been placed on there?
Yes, I do.
But still the same cooler?
It looks like the same cooler.
Your Honor, at this point, the state's going to ask for identification to be stricken from States Exhibit 28.
No objection.
Right, the ID is stricken on Exhibit 28. It's entered as a full exhibit.
So that cooler that we just looked at, that was your cooler that was in the home?
It looks like my cooler, yes.
And that was there back in December of 2019?
Yes.
Ms. Lubin, I have an item in here that's marked States Exhibit 77 for identification purposes only. What I would like to do is I would like to open up the top of the packaging so that you can see it, and then ask whether or not you can identify the object, okay?
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may borrow the scissors again, please. Lubin, can you look,
Yeah.
if I could ask the witness just to step down for a minute to look inside.
Yes?
So would you mind stepping down for a minute, please? If you could just look at this object in general, we're going to go ahead and open it. Other than the conditions it's in, can you see the color?
Yes.
The shape?
Yes.
The handle?
Yes.
Is this the same cooler?
It looks like the same cooler.
Looks like the same cooler to you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin, if you want to sit down. Is this, or say, does this look like the same cooler and the one that you identified before with regards to the one that you would leave money in?
Yes.
Did you ever keep anything else in this cooler?
I used it for basketball tournaments, for food.
For food, for basketball tournaments? At some point, did police come to see you at your home to ask you questions about Harmony's disappearance?
Yes.
And later on, did you agree and allow them to do a search of your home relative to that investigation?
Yes, I don't remember them actually searching the home, but they were free to come in and do whatever they like.
And let me ask you, did they take that cooler from you when you met with them on one occasion?
Yes.
Did they explain to you why that they took the cooler, or no?
Not really any detail, they just needed it.
Do you know why they took the cooler?
I had a suspicion.
What was your suspicion?
I know they were looking for,
Speculation.
I'll withdraw the question, Your Honor.
Objection is sustained.
Ms. Lubin, one thing I do want to make clear, other than the money and the food that you had before for basketball games, and other than the money that you left for Kayla, do you have any idea what else was kept inside this
No.
cooler?
no.
Did Adam Montgomery ever talk to you about this cooler?
Never.
It's my understanding that you do some woodworking.
Yes.
What do you do?
I upcycle and recycle pretty much any furniture I can get my hands on.
Any furniture? What kind of tools do you use to do that?
I have a table saw, I have a circular saw, I have a band saw, I have a sill saw.
Sill saw. What kind of saw is that?
It's a saw that I use to cut go through the nails on pallet wood. It's like it's a handle and it's got long blades that you can put in it.
Long blades? How long?
Well, the blade itself's like this big, and then you have the end piece that attaches inside the machine.
And how does that saw operate? You said it's about yay big. Is it round or is it?
No, it's like just a long blade about this thick, and it kind of vibrates back and forth as it.
I'm assuming you're holding your hands up to be, what, maybe about an inch thick? Is that about right?
Yeah, maybe almost an inch.
Almost an inch? Sorry, Christina, I apologize for the delay. And could you describe just again, you've got, I believe you said you've got a jigsaw. Do you have a miter saw or a chop saw? Anything like
I do have a miter saw, yes.
I'm going to go ahead and show you what's been marked Stakes Exhibit 63. Do you have a grinder?
No,
You don't own a grinder.
no, I don't own a grinder.
And how long have you been doing woodworking?
About 6 years.
6 years or so?
Mm-hmm.
It's fair to say you've got a lot of different tools for those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Woodworking.
Yes.
And a grinder is not one of them.
No.
Let me just have a moment. Just for point of clarification, Your Honor, I apologize. I referred to the cooler as Exhibit 77. It's Exhibit 73, so I apologize for that mistake. And that, Ms. Lubin, I don't have any further questions for you. I thank you very much for your time. I believe defense counsel may have a few.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Smith, and I do have a few questions for you, and let's start with the tools, okay? Where do you keep your tools?
I have some by the back door on a rack, and then I have some put away in a little storage unit that I made that's on wheels off the side of the dining room area.
Okay, so that's in your some are in the apartment, some are out?
No, they're both in the apartment, just different locations in the apartment. I've
Okay.
had to move them around.
Okay. And the basement, is that something anybody has access to?
No, well, the tenants have access to it because we each have a key,
Okay.
because it's padlocked, but it's not anything that we use to store anything or.
Okay. And I said I'd get to the tools, so I'll get to the tools first. I'm going to show you what has been marked as Exhibit H. Okay. Do you recognize what kind of tool this is?
That's a miter saw.
And that's one of the tools that you have, right?
Yes.
And did you say that you had a circular saw?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show you a copy of I. Can you tell me what kind of tool is in this image?
That is a circular saw.
Okay, I'm going to show the jury. Now, I want to get a little bit of an understanding of your place and where Kayla, Adam, and the kids stayed. Were they in your apartment?
Yes.
Did you have an extra spare room for them?
Not for them. That was packed full with furniture flipping and tools.
Okay. So it was a room that you had available that you let them use for a while, but it wasn't a room that you had intended for them.
They didn't really use the room. They just put their items in there, their clothes in there, and they slept on the pull-out couch in the living room.
Okay. All right. So all the kids are, and the family is all together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just to get a better idea, and the jury too, of your house, you're on the first floor.
Yes.
And if you're on Dubuque Street, if you look at the right side of the building, but facing Dubuque Street is a door.
Yes.
And then you've got a arched window beside that door.
Yes.
And then on the other side, there's a sidewalk that goes along the side.
Yes.
And I think that you said that there was a door in the middle of the building along that sidewalk.
Yes.
And then in the back of the building, there's another door.
Yes.
And you use the front door?
No.
You use the side door along the sidewalk?
No.
You use the back door?
Yes.
Okay, and that you park there?
Yes.
Okay, so you drive around back of the building, you park, and you can come in the back way?
Yes.
Do you have the whole downstairs?
The whole floor, yes.
Okay, so any door that you go in, you can access your place?
Yes.
You don't necessarily, but you
Right.
can. So the middle door, where did you say that Adam and Kayla and the kids would go in?
The middle door.
The middle door along the sidewalk?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the front door would be for tenants going upstairs or something?
They would use the middle door.
Okay. Front door was for show?
The front door, you go out and get your mail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I want to talk about when you met Harmony. And you recall that visit, right?
Yes.
And you even recalled what she was wearing, right?
No, I don't recall what she was wearing.
Okay, I'm going to show you a copy of a report that I believe that you were given to review prior to your testimony. And do you remember meeting with the state about your prior testimony?
Yes.
And you reviewed the report that they asked you to review?
I remember reviewing it, yes.
Okay, and you said that it was accurate?
Yes.
Okay. If I show you a copy of that report, will that help refresh your recollection of if at some point you remembered what she was wearing?
Yes.
It's been a chaotic couple of years, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, I'm going to show you a copy of that page 165 that they gave you. And you can read any of this report about you, but I'm going to ask specifically about what
Okay.
you told them there.
Okay, I just read that part.
Okay. And do you recall that you remembered then that she was wearing a pink jacket?
I don't really remember what she was wearing, like visually. I remember this. I remember everything else in there, but I don't really remember a fuzzy coat. It
Okay.
doesn't say anything about pink.
And pigtails?
Yes, I remember the pigtails
Okay. And glasses?
and glasses.
And you remember that because you were paying attention to her, right?
She was next to me in the living room.
Okay. So you were able to see her face,
Yes,
and she was adorable.
yes,
And you enjoyed meeting her and trying to get to know her.
she didn't talk much, and they were there very briefly.
Okay. And I believe that you said she looked healthy?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And she was pleasant, didn't talk much, but seemed fine.
She seemed fine, yes.
Okay. Thank you. No, I'm sorry, no further questions.
One quick question, Mr. Lubin. I apologize, Your Honor. Just one question. You just shown a couple different saws by Attorney Smith a moment ago, and then you look at this. You said this is a grinder from Exhibit 63. So, I believe you said you did not own this. correct?
No, I do not have a grinder.
So, haven't owned one in the past either.
Never.
So if somebody saw one new in a box, it wasn't yours?
No. No.
Thank you. No further questions?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
May I step down?
Just a brief moment, Your Honor. This won't be long. All set, Your Honor. Thank you. At this point, the state would call criminalist Katie Swango to the stand, please. Just step down. Sorry, Ms. Swango, for the courts, I apologize. Thank you very much for being here. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please feel free to have a seat. And as we're being recorded here today, would you please go ahead, state your full name, and spell both your first and last name for the record?
Katie Lynn Swango. Katie, Katie, Swango, Swango.
All right. Thank you very much. And Ms. Swango, where are you currently employed?
I work for the New Hampshire State Police in the Forensic Laboratory.
How long have you worked for them?
Next month will be 16 years.
16 years?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you first begin work as a criminalist?
I worked at the California Department of Justice in Richmond, California, in their laboratory.
How long did you work out in California?
Just over 6 years, I think it was. 6 years and a couple months.
6 years and a couple months. Okay. What did you specialize in when you were working in California?
So when I started there, I was actually working in their method development unit, but the whole lab that I worked in was all still forensic DNA. But I was in method development, which is just testing methods to see if you can do things faster, cheaper, better than whatever the caseworkers are doing then. And then I entered a training program to be an actual forensic DNA case analyst. When that was over, I was an analyst for about a year there before I moved to New Hampshire.
And when you moved to New Hampshire, and I take it at that point, did you start working for New Hampshire State Police Forensic Laboratory? Was that your first job when moving into New Hampshire?
Yes, I moved here specifically for the job.
And what position did you start at for them?
The same position I'm in right now, a criminalist too.
So with regards to that, what unit do you work in inside the State Police Forensic Lab?
Forensic biology.
And could you just please, for a brief moment, explain to the jury what the different units are at the State Police Forensic Lab?
Sure. So the lab has a lot of different services that we offer. So there's fingerprints, there's controlled drugs, there's toxicology, there's digital evidence. So there are many different sections, one of them being the forensic biology unit.
And what sort of background do you have to have in training? First of all, let's talk about education, I guess. What kind of education do you have to work as a criminalist too, and to work in the forensic biology unit?
So to work in the lab in general, you have to have a bachelor's of science degree. But to be in DNA specifically, to be an analyst in the U.S., to be a DNA analyst, you need to have specific classes on top of a Bachelor of Science degree, and the Bachelor of Science has to be in a science, chemistry, biology, forensic science, something like that. But the classes that you have to have specifically for DNA is you have to have microbiology or molecular biology, you have to have statistics, genetics, and biochemistry.
So for your own educational degrees, I take it you obviously meet the bachelor's requirement, but what other degrees do you have?
Right. I also have a PhD in human genetics.
I'm sorry, in what?
Human genetics.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to stand close to the microphone myself, so if you could just scoot in a little bit close to the microphone, I'd appreciate that. And what are some of your current duties inside the unit? What do you do right now for them?
So I am a DNA analyst for the casework. So that means that I will do DNA cases. I also am trained to work in another section of the forensic biology unit, which we call serology. That is identifying body fluids on evidence. So I work in those two sections within the unit. I write my own reports, I review other people's work, I train other people, and I go to court.
Okay. So I take it then that your duties do include the analysis and the comparison of different DNA samples.
Yes.
Could you please describe, I believe you talked a little bit about some of the additional training that you need and qualifications, but what sort of training and qualifications did you gain to be able to make those comparisons between different DNA samples?
So that's all part of when you're training to be a caseworker, both back when I was in California as well as here. We take classes, you have on-the-job training, and that's all teaching you how to follow the guidelines that are recommended for DNA testing in the U.S.
Do you have any continuing education requirements? Once you get your degrees, do you have to keep doing other coursework to be certified?
Yes, to remain an analyst in the U.S., you have to have a minimum of 8 hours of continuing education every year that's specific to DNA. Generally, we go to conferences, so it's a couple days. It's not just the 8 hours, but it can be just 8 hours, but it's a minimum of 8 hours a year.
So between your 7 years in California and your 13 years here in New Hampshire, when you add those together, how many DNA profiles would you say that you've analyzed over your career so far?
Thousands.
Just thousands.
Right. I don't have a specific number, but thousands of samples.
Have you ever been qualified in court as an expert in the area of DNA analysis and testing?
Yes, I have.
About how many times?
Around 40.
And with regards to those qualifications of being qualified as an expert, has that occurred here in the state of New Hampshire?
Yes, most of the times. I think only 2 were in California, so around 38 times here.
38 times here in New Hampshire?
Yes.
And does that include here in Hillsborough County in the Northern District?
Yes.
At this point, Your Honor, we would ask that criminal Swango be qualified as an expert in the field of DNA analysis.
Any objection?
I have no objection to her giving her opinion.
I find her so qualified.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Criminal Swango, if you could explain a little bit about DNA. Everybody's seen a lot of things on TV and the news, but courtroom is not necessarily like they put things on TV or in the news. Or, excuse me, TV or in movies. Can you just explain for us what is DNA? Where does it come from? And how does it play a role in your work?
So DNA is what we kind of hear as the blueprint of our bodies. It's what makes us a human instead of an animal or a plant or something like that. We get our DNA from half from your mom, half from your dad. We can find it in any cell in your body except a red blood cell. Everybody has different DNA in their body, except identical twins. So if there's an identical twin, they'll have identical DNA, but everyone else will have a different profile. As I said, it's in all the cells in your body, which is why it's helpful in a case like this, or not just this kind of case, but forensics in general, because everybody's profile is unique except identical twins. If we can find a body fluid or cells from a person, we can identify who that's from, usually.
If I could ask a quick follow-up to that, you stated that DNA cannot be found inside red blood cells. So how is it then that DNA can be found in a blood sample from somebody or a blood swab, even if it's not in the red blood cells themselves?
Because there's a lot of other cells in your blood. So blood isn't just red blood cells. It's got platelets, it's got white blood cells, and other components of your floating around in your blood. So yes, if we were swabbing literally just red blood cells, we wouldn't necessarily get a profile. But we're not. That we're getting the whole component of the blood, and that's what we're getting the DNA from.
What part of the DNA do you look at when you're going to go ahead and kind of process and develop a DNA profile?
So we're looking at, so every cell has a nucleus inside, and that is the DNA that we're looking at, the DNA in the nucleus. We're not sequencing. We're not sequencing your DNA. We're not trying to get like all of your DNA. We're looking at certain regions of the DNA that scientists have found are not linked to any certain diseases or anything. So we can't look at the profile and know what someone looks like. We can't tell if they have some sort of medical history. We can't tell anything like that. These are just parts of the DNA that for some reason that we don't know, through time have developed such that they're different from person to person, but they don't have some sort of, they don't actually cause anything in particular. They don't cause anything to be wrong with people necessarily. It's just that they're different from person to person.
What's the purpose then of comparing DNA? I mean, how is it really used in forensic work?
So we will get DNA from an item of evidence at a scene, and that's where we get one profile from. And then to know whose it is, we have to have known samples from people that they think might be players in the scene. And we would take the profile from each person, we would look at them side by side, and you can just look down in like a tabular format at the profiles to tell if they match or if they're similar and could be from the same person. And then we have to tell them how strong of a match that is, or how close those profiles could be. And so we do a statistic to provide that information as well.
So, and I want to make sure I'm getting it right. So you can develop a profile of an individual, either something that's not known. So, for example, a DNA that's found in a location, maybe on a podium, and then compare that to a known profile of somebody from a known sample. How do you get those known samples?
They have to be submitted by the police department.
Okay. If you were to take a known sample from me right now, what are some of the different ways that you could do that?
The way that is easiest and what usually we do is we take what's called a buccal swab. So it's just a long swab on a stick. So it's kind of like a Q-tip, but whereas a Q-tip is double-ended, it's just got one end that's cotton, and it's got a long stick, maybe about 6 inches long. We would swab the inside of your mouth or give it to you to swab the inside of your mouth. And that's what we would collect, and it's called a buccal swab.
Could you also be able to develop a profile from somebody's blood if you know whose blood it is?
Absolutely. That used to be what people did, is we would have, but you'd have to have a phlebotomist, and it's a lot more invasive. for a person, so it's just easier to get the buccal swabs. But we could get it from any body fluid if they know it's from a certain person because they can see it being collected from that person, we could use it. It's just the buccal swab is easiest.
As long as it has cells from a person, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. Did you conduct any DNA analysis in this case, either of something where you didn't know who it was from at the beginning or whether it was a known profile, you knew who provided the sample?
I did.
Okay. And what known DNA samples did you have for this case? What are the knowns that you were working with?
I had 2 known samples. I believe they were both buccal swabs. One was from Adam Montgomery and one was from Crystal Sorey.
So one from an Adam Montgomery and one from Crystal Sorey.
Yes.
Okay. Did you obtain a profile for Miss Sorey from the known swab that you had?
Yes.
And did you obtain a profile for Adam Montgomery from the swab that you had?
Yes.
Were you, from looking at those two, you now had 2 fully known profiles. So if I were to put these 2 side by side, I take it they would not look similar to one another.
No, they wouldn't because, as we said, everybody is going to have a different profile.
Okay. How many pieces of evidence did you then compare to the known profiles that you had for Crystal Sorey and for Adam Montgomery?
I would have to check my reports. I don't think I ended up with that. I had at least one, but I don't know if I had more than one. I don't believe I had more than one to compare with either of them.
The reports that you wrote in this particular case, I want to make sure that I have an understanding. Did you do a report on January 19th of 2022, February 21st of 2020, January 29th of 2022? Apologize, let me get these in order. January 1st of 2022, February 1st of 2022, February 21st of 2023, and June 29th of 2022. Better
I know
yet.
I wrote several reports. I would have to see them to know if those are the correct dates.
And so, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
Swango, and let me ask you, when you said you've done thousands of these analyses in your career, with regards to reports that you write, about how many reports do you write per year?
I'd say maybe 60
Maybe
a year,
60.
something like that.
And do you review other people's reports as well for accuracy?
I do.
I'm going to show you a series of documents that have shown defense counsel. I apologize. I'm going to go ahead and let you take a look over it and just let me know when you're done.
Yes, they all look like my reports, and that, from looking at the items, that looks like the right number of reports as well.
With regards to those items, I'm going to have you hold on to those just for right now. Feel free to turn them upside down if you would, and to refresh your recollection with regards to specifics on this case, just let us know.
Okay.
We'll be able to do that, either myself or defense counsel.
Okay.
Specifically, one of the things that I would like to ask you is with regards to the number of, you had these 2 known profiles, one for Crystal Sorey, one for Adam Montgomery, but the number of different things that you compared those to, your unknowns, if you were. I'm wondering if you could tell us how many different swabs or cuttings or items that you compared your 2 knowns to.
As I said, I know that there was one item that I compared them both to and was able to provide statistics.
Okay.
I did not actually get comparable profiles for most of the other items that I tested.
And let's talk about that. When you say comparable profiles for the other items that you tested, from those other items, what were their test results?
So a lot of the items that I got, there wasn't enough DNA, so it was below the level of detection in our methods, or there was at least one that had DNA from more than 2 people. We don't have methods in our lab to look at mixtures of more than 2 people, so that was something again that I couldn't compare to anyone. And sometimes there's DNA there, it's detected, but there's not enough that would, so for us to make a comparison, the profile has to be of a certain quality. And so we would get the profile, we would look at it, we would do a statistic on the profile to see how rare or common it would be in the population. If it doesn't meet a certain threshold, we say that it just isn't able to be compared. It's too little DNA to compare to anybody. And so that's what happened with most of the samples that I tested in this case, unfortunately.
So if I'm understanding that clearly, so most of the samples that you did test, there just either wasn't enough there or it didn't meet enough thresholds that you can definitively say, haha, I've got a DNA profile here.
Correct. That's following our protocols in the laboratory. That's how most of them panned out in this case, yes.
And what to generate those profiles, even in the one item that you said that you could, or the ones that you couldn't, what are the 4 steps that you go through to basically get and try to create a DNA profile from a swab or from an item?
Okay. So I'm not, and we don't create them. Mm-hmm. Creating makes it sound like
I
we're
apologize.
making them.
To be able to see if there's sufficient information there to generate a profile, not generate, excuse me. I want to make sure I'm using your language. You tell us the right words to say.
So the first step that we have is we're going to take our item of evidence and cut a piece into a tube, and we're going to put some buffers and chemicals in there, and we're going to try to break apart the cells. And the purpose of that is to get the DNA out of the cell, because we can't do anything with it if it's still within the cells. And that step is called extraction. We're extracting the DNA, just like you would extract juice or anything else that you would have an extract. So we're going to extract the DNA out of the cells. Then once you have the DNA, we need to figure out how much we have, because we've, through validations, looked at our methods, and we know how much DNA is ideal for our downstream. So if we have too much DNA, our equipment isn't going to work properly. If we don't have enough DNA, it's not going to give an ideal profile. We might not get any profile. So we need to know about how much DNA we have so that we can decide if we have to dilute it before we go on, because we don't want to have too much that it doesn't work. And of course, if we have methods online, or depending upon how we do our extraction, if we need to concentrate a sample, and if that's possible. So our next step then is figuring out how much DNA we have, and that is called quantitation. We're figuring out the quantity, so quantitation. The next step is amplification. So that's where we're going to make lots of copies of the pieces of DNA that we're interested in. Again, I said we're not sequencing your whole genome. We're just taking specific locations of the DNA. As I said, these ones that scientists have found are different from person to person, but they don't cause any sort of diseases, or they can't tell if you wear glasses or not, or anything like that. So we're just going to make copies of these specific pieces of DNA, and that's called amplification. We're amplifying it, making more of it. The next step is when we run it on our instrument, which is called a genetic analyzer. So we would take our DNA, we put it on the genetic analyzer, the samples run through it, and the data is collected by a laser, and it's just colored light is what the instrument sees. It sees colored light coming off at different times. But if I just look at that data, it's just colored light at different times, and a human can't really make anything out of it, so of course we need a computer software that can take that information and make it something that we can use in some way. The way that it does that is what it comes off of, something that I would see is, you kind of say, it looks kind of like a graph with a bunch of hills and peaks and valleys, and we call that an electropharogram. And that is what we would look at to determine a DNA profile, because the software is going to compare the peaks and valleys and the different colors with knowns that come from the company to tell us if you see a blue peak at this time, at this size, this is going to be this. This was what the number would be for that part of the profile. If you see a red peak at this time, it's going to be this number in the profile. And that's how we end up making a table from our hills and valleys and making a table of what that person's profile is going to be. Even if we don't know who it is, we know that that came from a person and that's their profile. And then we would do that with each item and compare them.
And so if I can ask, you said before you had 2 known samples. Is that the same process that you put the 2 known samples through, the one for Crystal Soria and the one for Adam Montgomery?
Exactly, yes.
So from that you've developed, or you were able to see a table of what their DNA makeup was with regards to the standards and the protocols that you would ordinarily follow in the lab. Again, like you said, we're not sequencing somebody's entire genome here.
That's correct.
And did you have a known sample for Harmony Montgomery?
I did not.
The one item you said before that you were able to but be able to discover and see that there was a profile there. Do you remember what that item was?
It was a toothbrush.
Okay. And specifically, do you remember, did you look at the toothbrush itself?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it was a Troll's toothbrush.
Hands in the apple, and I go ahead and open this up and show you what's been marked States Exhibit 66. Do you recognize that?
I recognize that to some degree, but mostly I can recognize the packaging because it has my initials and the date that I went into the bag on the outside of the package. So I can see my initials and the date that I opened it the first time and the date I opened it a second time.
So is this the Troll's toothbrush that you have?
It is.
When you put this sample, how did you collect the sample from the toothbrush?
I just cut some of the bristles off into my tube.
Okay. And from that, did you put it through the same sequence that you just described for us?
I did.
Okay. And with regards to that particular profile that you were able to see from that toothbrush, what were you able to conclude after you were looking at that profile in comparison with your 2 known profiles of Crystal Soria and Adam Montgomery?
So remember we said half your DNA is from mom and half is from dad. So I could look at that profile as compared to both Crystal's and Adam's, and I could tell what part came from Crystal and what part came from Adam, and everything lined up perfectly as if that could have been from a child made by those 2 people.
And specifically with regards to the child, could you tell what the gender of the child would be?
It was female.
At the time that you did this, did you know or not know that Crystal Soria has only had one biological child that's a female?
I did not know that at the time.
And with regards, did you know or did you not know that Crystal Soria only had one biological child with Adam Montgomery?
I didn't know that either.
With regards to making this comparison and being able to look at this, you stated before that you're able to come up with a probability or a certainty, or what's the right term to use?
We call it a probability. We would say the words are, it's more likely. It's however times more likely that it came from 2 people than as if it didn't come from those and it came from a random person.
So are you able to, or the probability, what is the probability that there is some other female out there unrelated to a child of Crystal Soria and Adam Montgomery having a matching DNA for the DNA profile that you saw on that toothbrush?
I feel like that's a statistic that maybe is possible, but I didn't run that. So I know that if I could I look at that last report that had the statistic?
If you could, please, yes. And
Just for defense counsel's clarification.
It's the June 29th
June
report,
29th,
2022.
And with regards to page 7280, if you give up the second page of your report.
Yes.
7280.
The statistic, once I looked at the profile of the toothbrush and compared it with both Crystal and Adam, the statistic was that it was at least 100 sextillion, so that's a lot of zeros. I think
21? Sound
21,
about right?
something like that. I would have to write that down. More likely to see these genetic results if the profile of the toothbrush was a biological child of Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey than if it was two unrelated people.
So it's that much more likely that it's from a biological child of Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey than
Some random people.
random people. And that's 100 sextillion?
Yes.
So practically speaking, from looking at this, without being able to say, of course, that this is in fact Harmony Montgomery's profile, it's 100 sextillion more likely her profile than anybody else.
Right. If they have one child or one female child, then that would be my next step in saying that makes sense, right?
If they had one female
If
child.
they had one female child,
Right.
yes.
Which you didn't know at the time that you did this testing, right?
Correct.
Your Honor, if we can approach.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to break for the day. We'll resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., so please be here at 8:45. I'm just going to ask you, ma'am, to stay seated. I remind you, don't discuss the case with each other or with anybody else. Don't do any independent research. Don't look up any law or terms that you've heard. Don't do any scientific research. Your verdict must be based exclusively on the evidence that you hear at this trial, not on something else that you've heard or read, or based on any conversations that you've had with anybody else. So it is your highest duty as officers of this court to make sure that you are following that obligation. Please come back tomorrow morning at 8:45 for a 9 a.m. start. Thank you very much for your time and attention today, ladies and gentlemen. Please all rise for the jurors.